Welcome to JavaScript Beginner Chapter. So, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is a programming language that creates dynamically updating content. Imagine a user come to our website and click on a button and something must appear like a pop-up, right? We cannot sit around and wait for the user to do that and then we go to the CSS file and change the display mode of that content, right? We can use the help of JavaScript to do that. So we can create pop-ups, appear on the screen after user do something. Or I'm sure you have seen this example that there is a timer, a countdown on a website, and the number is changing. That has been done by JavaScript. Or there are menus that when you hover your mouse or when you click on it, another menu will appear. That is also done by JavaScript. So with the help of JavaScript, we can create dynamic content on our website. Here is an example that we have been using along the course. When I hover my mouse on each of these colors, it shows me a menu. And when I click on some of these icons, another thing will appear. This has been done by JavaScript. Okay, so as you can see, we can make some changes on our website based on the user's actions. We can do that with the help of JavaScript. And on the next part, we are going to learn more about JavaScript, how we can write it, where we can write it, and we are going to learn more about the structure. So that was all for the introduction to JavaScript. And if you're ready, let's go for the next part. Before we learn more about the structure of JavaScript, let's learn how we can write it or where we can write it. Same as CSS, there are three ways to write JavaScript code. The first one is inline JavaScript, where we come to the tag of every element and there we write JavaScript as the attribute of that element, but it is very limited and we cannot write everything like CSS. Okay, there are some small number of things that we can write or do. So later in the course, I will show you how you can write inline JavaScript. The next type is internal JavaScript, same as what we did here with CSS. We came to head, but this time you can write that code, that JavaScript code, in any part of the HTML file you want. I usually prefer it at the end, and there's a reason for that that I'm going to explain when we get to that topic. And how you can write internal JavaScript code in an HTML file? It's easy, just open a tag called script, okay? And as I said, you can create this tag any part of the HTML code that you want. And inside this tag, whatever you write will be counted as JavaScript code. And there is the third way, which I'm sure you guessed it, and that is external JavaScript. And for that, we need to come to the head and here create another tag to link this HTML file to a JavaScript file. And for that, we need to write down a script, okay? And then inside this tag, we need to write down the type of this file, okay? Which it will be text or JavaScript. And the second attribute is src, where we need to write the path to our JavaScript code. So I'm gonna come here and just create a JavaScript file, and I'm gonna name it just index.js, right? And I'm going to link this file to the JavaScript file that I created, and all I need to do is write down index.js, save it, and now this file, this HTML file, is linked to our JavaScript file. And when you are on JavaScript file, pay attention to the right bottom of the screen. It is written JavaScript. So VS Code will guess the language, that the programming language that we are using in this file, which is JavaScript. If you don't see this blue bar here, simply come to View, Appearance, and Status Bar, okay? If for any reason this is not the right language, you can simply just click on it and select the right language that you want to. And if I go on HTML, you see it will change to HTML. If I go to CSS, it will change to CSS, okay? So these were the three types of writing JavaScript code in our file. And on the next lesson, we are going to learn more about the structure of a JavaScript code. Let's learn more about JavaScript variables. Dynamic websites need to remember the information in order to be able to change it or show it or make some influence on it, right? So imagine that we have a box and let's name this box price, okay? And let's say we have a piece of information about the price of our product, which is $10. And we want to keep this information inside our price box, okay? And whenever we need this information, we can open the box and bring out the information. To this box that keeps our information, we call it variable. And to the information itself, we call value. So if you want to convert this example into JavaScript code, it will look like this. So we use var keyword, which stands for variable. And then we have to write down the name of our variable, which is, in this case, it is price. And then equal to the value, which is number 10, right? So let's have more examples on VS Code to get better at this concept. So here we are in our project, and if you don't have the files for this project, it is easy. You can go to the resources of this lesson and download the zip file for this project, unzip it, and then you will have access to all these files, and together we can practice and learn more about it. So here we are in our JavaScript file that we created it in the previous lesson, and let's create a variable. So I'm going to write down var, which just stands for variable, and write down the name of my variable, which is price, and then equal to number 10, and then close it with a semicolon. And if I save this file, even though that it is connected to my HTML file, as you can see here, if I come to my website and I refresh it, nothing happens, okay? Even if I come to the developer tool here, nothing changed, okay? There is a code that I want you to learn now, and that is called console.log, okay? And whatever we write inside the parentheses will be printed here in the developer tool in the console. So this way we can practice JavaScript and learn more about it and see the code that we wrote actually works or not. So here I'm going to write down, you can just add a quotation and write whatever you want as a text. So this is a test to see if our code works and if these two codes are connected, these two files. Now if I refresh it, I need to see this word here. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Right. This is a test, right? Now I can replace this with the name of my variable, which is price. Save it, come here, refresh, and now we see the number, okay? So during this lesson, we learned about how we can create a variable and store a value inside that variable, and how we can print some piece of information, a value of a variable, or a text on our console, okay? So that was all about this lesson. And on the next part, we are going to learn how we should name a variable if we have more than one word, okay? So if you're ready, let's go for the next lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned how we can create a variable and how we can print it to the console. And the thing is that the variable that we create, we can change the value as well. We can come here and write down, for example, price equal to 12, for example. And the thing is that you need to use this keyword var only for the first time that you're creating the variable. For the rest of the times, you don't need it when you want to call the variable. And let's print this variable again and save it, come here, refresh it. And you can see the first time it was 10, then we changed the value to 12, and then we printed it, and now it is 12. Now there is another variable, another keyword to create variables, and that is const. Okay, let's create a variable and call it, for example, number, and equal, for example, to 20, right? And you can see that the color of the price is different with the color of const here, okay, number. You see it's a little bit darker because these two, even though that both of them are variables, they have a small difference. And let's print this console.log, okay. And here we're going to call number. and let's save it, come here. So we have our first variable 10, 20, 10, 12, then we have our const, which is 20. Now, the thing is that the difference between using keyword var and const is here, that when I want to change this number and assign it, for example, to 30 and come here and print it. Okay, save. If I do this and come here and refresh it, then I get an error, assignment to constant variable. This is because we cannot change the value of a const, but we can change the value of a var. Okay, so this is the difference between these two that I wanted to mention here. And whenever you want to use a piece of information that you're sure it's not going to change at all, like for example the birth year, okay, birth year of a user will never change because it's a fixed number. So for those cases you can use const, but for other variables that will be changed you can use var, and every time you want to call that variable you don't need to use the keyword. All you need to do is to just use the name. That was all about this lesson, and on the next part we are going to learn how we can name a variable which it has more than one word. Okay, so that was all. See you on the next one. So how we can name a variable which has more than one word. There are several do's and don'ts that here we are going to learn more about. The first thing that we cannot do is that we cannot use any space between the names. For example, let's say we want to create a variable called product price, and we use var and product price. We cannot use a space between the words, okay? The second thing is that we cannot use dots. Product dot price is also not working and you will receive an error. The third thing is that we cannot also use a dash, product dash price. And finally, we cannot use an underline, product underline price. So how we can create a variable which has more than one word? We must use a strategy which is called camel casing. Here we write down product, and for the second word or the words coming after that, we have to start the word with the capital letter. So as you can see here, product is all small letters, but the second word, the first letter of the second word will be capital letter. And there's a suggestion when you want to create a const. It is suggested to use all capital letters for const. And the reason is because when we create it, we use the keyword, but later when we want to use that, when we want to call that variable or do something with it, if the names are similar between const and var, we cannot figure out which one it is. So it is suggested when you want to create a const, use all capital letters, okay? This way later when you call it, you will know that you cannot change the value of this variable, and it will help you to avoid mistakes in the future. So that was all about naming the variables, and if you're ready, let's go for the next part. So let's learn more about the different type of data that we can store in a variable. The first one is a string. So let's create that. Var, for example, username is equal to Puya. Okay, so to this type of data which comes between quotation, we call a string. It's similar to a text, and it is like a chain of letters. That's why we call it a string. The second type of data is number. So var, for example, age equal 32. Now this data type is called a number, and numbers also have two different types. If they don't have decimals, okay, they are a whole number, we call them integer. And if they are, for example, weight equal to, let's say, 76 point, for example, 5, okay, if they have decimals, we call them float, okay? So till now we have a string data type, we have two number data type, which the first one is integer and the second one is float, okay, because it has decimal points. And the last one is Boolean. So let's say, for example, var is programmer. And you can see I have used camel casing here. Is programmer equal to true. Now, Boolean is like a switch. When you want to turn on the light or turn off the light, you have two options, on or off. And Boolean here is the same. It has option true or false. Now, either I am a programmer or I'm not. Either it is true or not. You see when I hover the mouse on it, it shows the data type, Boolean, here number, and here string. Okay, so these are the four different data types. And for example, you can, same as before, you can print them as well, console.log. Okay, we already tried to print a string or a number, and let's try printing a Boolean and see how it will look. So is programmer, save it, come here and refresh it, and we get true. Okay, so this was all about the different data types that we can store in a variable. And if you're ready, let's go for the next lesson. So let's practice what we have learned till now. The objective of this practice is to convert the information of this shoe into JavaScript variables. And here is the shoe. And here is the information about this shoe. So the color is yellow. The size is 40. The price is $124.95. And this shoe is bestseller. So you need to understand the type of each of these variables. And finally, when you created them, then show all the information in the console as well. So if you're ready, pause the video and begin this challenge. I hope you have been successful. Let's remove the code that we have and let's start over. So the first thing is the color of our shoe, which is yellow. And we have to create it as a string. The next thing is the size, which will be 40. It is a number or it is an integer. And the next one is the price. Okay, that is $124.95. And finally, we have the bestseller. And here I can say, for example, is bestseller equal to true. Okay, when you want to name a Boolean, it is better to have a verb at the beginning. For example, is bestseller, is programmer, is open, true. For example, if the door is open equal false, it means it is closed. Okay, and how we can display them in the console.log, and I'm going to mention, for example, color, and then let's add the semicolon and copy it 4 times. For the other values, here we have size, and here we have price, and finally we have is bestseller. Save it, come to our file here, bring it higher, refresh. So we have the information about our shoe, which is yellow, the size is 40, the price is $124.95, and the bestseller is set to true. Okay, so that was all about this practice. And on the next part, we are going to learn about number equality. If you're ready, let's go for the next lesson. What if we want to compare two numbers together? Let's create two variables. And the first one I'm going to call N1, stands for number 1. And I'm going to just give it a number, for example, 10. And the second variable, I'm going to say number 2. And let's say it is 5, for example. And I'm going to create console.log, right? And inside it here, we want to compare these two numbers together. So if you want to see if these two numbers are equal or not, I can say N1 and equal N2. Now this line of code, try to check if N1 is equal to N2. So if I save it and come here and refresh it, because they are not equal, it gives me false value. Now if I change this to, for example, 10 and save it again, refresh, now it is true. So if you want to see two numbers are equal, we use 3 equal sign. What if we want to check two numbers are not equal? Okay. For that, we are going to replace the first equal with the exclamation point. So this way, we are saying that check if number 1 is not equal to number 2. Because they are equal, we will receive false value. So if I refresh it, it will be false. And if I change number 2 back to 5, save it and refresh it, now it is true. It means that it is true. Number 1 is not equal to number 2. Okay, so this is how we check if two numbers are equal or not. On the next part, we are going to learn about operators. If you're ready, let's go for the next lesson. Let's learn more about the operators. Let's say we have a variable called cash, and it is equal to 50. And let's say we have another variable called saving, which is equal to, for example, 600. Okay, so we have $600 saving and $50 in cash. And let's create another variable called result. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep it for now, and later I'm gonna add to it. And let's console.log the result. Okay, so here let's come into the result, and let's say we want to see the sum of the cash and savings. So we can come here and write down, for example, 50 plus 600. Save it, come to this page, refresh it, and now we see the sum of those two numbers. We can replace these numbers with the variables as well. I can write down, for example, cash, and here I can write saving. Save it and refresh it. We see the same thing, right? I can add to this as well. I can add, for example, $20 here as well myself. Save it. Now we see 670. So we can have this also here as well. Let's just remove this and just replace result with this. And to make sure it is working, I'm going to add another number to it. Save, refresh it. Now we'll see 690. Okay, so this is how we can sum variables to each other or numbers to each other. Now it's the same if you want to subtract. For example, let's say we have saving here, and instead of cash, we have, for example, cost, and it is $50. Let's replace it with result. Okay, so the result is saving minus cost. Okay, save it, come here, and we should see $550. Okay, 600 minus 50. The next operator is multiply. Let's say we have, for example, 3 guests, and we want to take them to a show, which the ticket cost is, for example, $20. So if you want to see the result, we should say guest, okay, multiply by ticket cost. And for multiply, we use a star sign, save it, and come here. Now we see 60, okay? 3 times 20, it will be 60. And it's the same for divide operator. Let's say we have, let's say we went out for dinner, and the cost, for example, dinner cost was, let's say, $90, and we are 3 friends, for example. And here, let's divide dinner cost, friends, and the sign for the divide is forward slash. Save it, come here, and now we have 30. 90 divided by 3 will be 30. Okay, so these are the 4 operators. There's another operator which is really useful, but later in the course I'm going to point out to that operator. And one other thing is that we can use, for example, plus. We can use plus sign with a string and numbers or variables. For example, here we have the result, okay? And what if I want a string to come before this result? For example, I can say, let's add a string here, and I can say each person must pay, okay? And here I'm going to add plus. Okay, save it, come here, refresh it, and now it's saying each person must pay 30. And how we can make it like dollar, we can add this dollar sign here, save it, $30. Okay, so this is how we can sum the string with a variable, or we can add numbers. Okay, so these were the 4 operators for numbers, and on the next part we are going to learn about the operator for string. So if you're ready, let's go for the next part. So during the previous lesson we learned about the different operators between numbers. Now let's take a look at what will be the reaction if we have a string instead of a number. So I'm going to remove this result here, and I'm going to remove it from here as well. And I'm going to replace the variables with n1 and n2. And for the numbers, I'm going to write a string, for example, string 10. And here I'm going to replace number 2 with a string 5, for example. And here I'm going to write n1 plus n2. Save it, come here and refresh. And as you can see here, we have 105, okay? And the way it works is that it doesn't add the numbers, it just put them side by side each other. And if I change the variables, for example, first variable with the second variable, and if I save it and refresh it, now we have 510. First came 5 and then 10. Now this was for sum. What if we want to use other operators like minus? Okay, save it, come here, and now it's not putting them side by side each other or do anything like that. It is acting like they are numbers. You see, we have 10 minus 15, we have 10 minus 5, and the result is 5. What if we use multiply? Save it, and it's the same way. It is acting if they are, and both of them are numbers, not a string. Okay, same goes for division. Now, what if we have a text here? For example, text. Okay, save it, and let's try plus. So it will put the words, the letters side by side each other. What if we use minus? For this one, it returns none. It cannot subtract 10 from text, okay? And it goes the same way for the other operators, right? So this is how it acts when we try to use operators on the strings or a combination. For example, 10 is a string and 5 is the number. If I save it and come here, it prints a number. And if I do it, for example, sum, it will go back to putting them side by side each other. Now it doesn't consider this as a number, it considers it as a string. It may sound a little bit complicated right now, but don't worry, as we go forward and when we practice, you'll get better at this stuff, okay? For now, just remember that we have 4 operators and more or less how they act on numbers, okay? On a string, as we go forward, we'll practice it and you'll get better at it, right? So that was all about this lesson. If you're ready, let's jump into the next one. So during this lesson, we are going to learn more about comparators. Comparators is for when we want to compare 2 numbers together. Now let's create 2 numbers, 2 variables, which hold saving, which is equal to 100, and another variable, which is product cost, which is equal to 150, okay? So we have 2 variables and we want to see if we can afford buying this product with our saving. So I'm going to come here, write down console.log, and here we need to compare these 2 numbers using comparators. We have 2 comparators, greater than product cost, okay? Here we are checking if our saving is greater than the product cost, and if I save it and come to our console, it is false. It is not greater than, it is 100 and product cost is 150, and the other one is less than, okay? And this is true because our saving is less than the product cost. But what if we went to a store and want to buy a pair of shoes that cost $65 and we also have $65? So let's do that. For example, our saving is $65 and shoes are also $65. So how we can compare and see if we can buy this, if we can afford this shoe, right? So let's write down saving. We can buy this shoe if our saving is greater than or equal to the price of the shoes, okay? So this is the sign is greater than or equal, okay? So if I save it, the result should be true, okay? And if the shoes were, for example, $75, now it's false. And we have the vice versa, we have less or equal, okay? So these are the comparator signs that we can use to compare two different variables, two different numbers, and see if the result is true or false. That was all about this lesson. On the next part, we are going to have a quiz, and after that, we'll practice comparators together. Right, so let's practice what we have learned till now. Based on a study mentioned in the book Change Your Habits, Change Your Life, financially successful people read an average of 30 minutes per day. Now, I use an application called Audible, and here's my state during the previous week. Here it is. You can see, for example, the first day I listened to audiobooks for 39 minutes, 18 minutes, then 10, 51, 27, and 69, and finally 31 minutes. So your objective in this practice is to calculate the average minutes I listen to audiobooks per day and print it if it is more than 30 minutes or not, okay? So just find the average that I listen to audiobooks per day and just check it if it is more than 30 or not. Pause the video and give it a go. All right, I hope you have been successful, and let's do this practice together. So the first thing that we need to do is to find the average, okay? And I'm going to create a variable, forgot the var. I'm going to create a variable called average, which is equal to, and now I'm going to sum all of the numbers that I have. So the first day it was 39 minutes, then it was 18 minutes, then 10, okay, then 51, and 27, 69 minutes, and finally the last number is 31 minutes, okay? So this is the sum of all the numbers that I have, but we need the average. So what we have to do, we have to calculate the sum of all these numbers and then divide it into number 7, because we have 7 numbers here. So to do so, I'm gonna add a parenthesis around them, okay, and then put the divide sign and then 7. Now this way, when I put this into parentheses, the code will understand that first I need to calculate the sum, then whatever was the sum, I will divide it into 7. If you don't put the parentheses here, the code will think that it should calculate 31 divided by 7, then sum the number with the other numbers, okay? So here is our average, and what I have to do is to write down console.log, okay, and then inside it, I need to check if this number is greater or equal than 30 or not. So I'm going to write down average if it is greater or equal than 30, right? I'm going to save it and come here and let's refresh it, and it is true. Now, if you want to see what how much it is, I can write another console.log, okay, and here I can just mention average, save it, and my average reading per day is 35 minutes, okay? And if you want to make it look nicer, we can add a plus here and write down 35 minutes per day, okay? So looks much better. Oh, we need a space here, and here it goes, okay? 35 minutes per day. All right, so this was how you could complete this challenge, and on the next part we are going to learn about another important thing in JavaScript, which is called if statement. So if you're ready, let's go for the next lesson. So if statement. Smart websites use booleans to make decisions on whether to run lines of code or not. We use if statement to let our website make the decision. So using the if statement will make our website much smarter, okay? And this is how we have to write an if statement. We start the code by writing if, and after that, inside parentheses, we have to write down the condition. And after that, we have to open a curly bracket, and inside it, we will put down the code that we want it to be executed if the condition is true. So if the condition is true, then the code will go ahead and execute the code inside the curly brackets. But if the condition is false, then the code will skip the curly bracket and go for the next line of code. You see, the structure is very simple. Now let's practice it on VS Code. In a couple of lessons earlier, we had an example of comparing two numbers, which one of them was our saving and the other one was the cost of a shoe, and we wanted to know if we can buy that pair of shoes. Okay, so let's use the same example here to practice if statement. So let's create the variables that we had. For example, let's say $65 is our cash, and the next one is the cost of shoes, which is also $65. Now let's write if statement to see if we can afford or buy this shoe or not. So let's start with if, and then we will have parentheses, and inside the parentheses we need to write down the condition. And for that, we can use the help of comparators to create that condition. And for example, here we want to check if the shoe cost is less than the amount of cash that we have. So shoes, if shoes less than or equal, then cash. If it is so, then we have a line of in curly brackets, we have to add our code that we want it to be executed. So here I'm going to write down, for example, console.log, and inside the parentheses I want to print a message that I have enough money to purchase the shoe. Okay, and we can put it on the next line to make it easier to read. So if the shoe cost is less than the amount of cash that we have, then we have enough money to purchase it. But if, let's go for the next if statement, if the shoe cost is greater than cash, now we want to execute another line of code. Console.log, and here let's write down we need more cash. Okay, if you pay attention here, I use less than or equal, but here I use greater than. The reason is because if both of them has the equal sign, then in this case, which our cash is exactly equal to the shoes, both of these statements will be true. And if we do that, then it will print I have enough money to purchase the shoe, and it also will print we need more cash, which is wrong in this case. Okay, so let's save it and see how it is. So I have enough money to purchase the shoe. Now, if let's say I have $45 and the shoe costs $65, we need more cash. And if let's say we have $85, $20 more than the cost of the shoes, still we get the message that I have enough money to purchase the shoe. Now let me just show you the example that I made. If both of them has the equal sign, if I save it and come here, it will print both of them. So the way it executes the code is that it starts from top and come to the bottom. It gets to our first if statement, go through the condition. If it is true, then it will jump here and execute this code. If it's not true, then it will skip whatever is inside this curly bracket and go for the next line. And then we have another if statement. Again, it will check the condition. If it is true, it will execute it. If it's not, it will go for the rest of the code. Okay, so it works this way. So that was all about this lesson. On the next part, we are going to practice if statement. And I have to say, if statements are really important and you can do a lot with them, okay? In early 2015, I was practicing another programming language, which also it had if statement in it. And I wasn't really knowledgeable in coding, so I only knew how to write if statements. With that simple if statement, I created a game for iOS App Store, okay? So I want you to know that if a statement is very important, and knowing it and practicing it can solve a lot of issues along the way, and you can come up with great ideas for your website or wherever you want to use it. And one other thing is that, as I said, some of these concepts, some of these ideas like if a statement is very common in different programming languages. We have if a statement in JavaScript, we have if a statement in Python, we have if a statement in C#, and some other programming languages as well. So when you learn one of them, later if you want to learn another programming language, it will be really easy for you. So that was all. Let's go for the next lesson. Welcome to this challenge. Here is the story. You want to go to a birthday party and you have to make sure you are not working that evening. So your objective in this practice is to check if you can go to the birthday party. So the steps are, you need a Boolean to check if you are working at that time or not. And if the Boolean is true, if you're working, then print that you can't go. If you're not working, then print that you can go to the party, okay? So if you're ready, pause the video and give it a go. So let's complete this challenge together. The first step is that we need a Boolean. So let's create that. Var is working, okay, equal to, for example, let's say true. And then we need our if statements. So if is working, then we have to print that we cannot go to the party. So I'm going to write down console.log, and inside it I'm going to add a string that I have work to do, okay, with a sad face. And the next one is that we need to create another if statement, and I can write the same Boolean here, but I can use the exclamation mark to make it negative, okay? So if is working or if it's not working, okay? We had this concept before in equality in numbers, if you remember. I will show you how it will work in a second. So let's add our code, console.log, and here let's add a string and say, let's go to the party, okay? So I'm going to save it. So our Boolean here is true, and basically it should execute this code. So let's come here and refresh it. And yeah, we are working, it's true, and I have work to do, right? I have an L here. So if it is false, save it. Now here, this condition is true if working is false, okay? So let's come here. Now let's go to the party. I'm not working, it's false. Let's go to the party, right? So our challenge is complete, but let's make it more complicated. Let's make it more fun. So let's say we have a car and our car is broken and we need our car to be ready so we can go to the party, okay? So pause the video and add two other conditions and check if the car is fixed, then you can go to the party. If the car is not fixed, then you have to wait for it or you cannot go to the party, right? So pause the video and try to complete this part as well. All right, so let's do it together. We need another Boolean here. Car is, for example, ready, okay, equal to, for example, false. And now we don't need to check this condition in the first part, because if you are working, it doesn't matter if the car is ready or not. We cannot go to the party at all. We have to check this condition when we are not working, meaning here. So if we are not working, then we have to check if the car is ready or not. So we can come here, add another if statement, and here in the condition, we can write down car is ready. So if the car is ready, it means that we can go to the party. So I'm going to cut this line and paste it here. So if we are not working and if the car is ready, then let's go to the party. And we have to check the other condition, which we are not working, but the car is not ready. So let's write down exclamation mark and our boolean here, car is ready, which is false, for example. Then we need our code to say console.log that I can't come, my car is not ready yet. Okay, so save it. And now the car is not ready, it's false. So if I refresh it, it says I can't come because my car is not ready. And if I change it to true, save it, come here, let's go to the party. Okay, so right now, as you can see, we have two if statement, and inside the second if statement, we have two other if statement. And I made this practice for you so you can understand the concept of using if statement much better. And there is no limit here, okay? You have to try to come up with a solution with different if statements to create your case, the situation that you have. And as we go forward, we will learn more about if statement. There are other things about if statement that I didn't talk about it yet. And as we go forward, we will learn more about that part, and we will practice it together so you can improve your skills. Okay, so that was all about this lesson. Let's jump into the next one. So the name of this lesson is Function, Creating and Calling. Several years ago, when I was younger and I was thirsty to become financially successful, I had a mentor and he told me, Puya, you need to win the everyday battle. And I was, what is everyday battle? So I learned that everyday battle is this concept that every day you are making some amount of money. Even if you are an employee, you're receiving some amount of money monthly, and when you divide that into 30, for example, you are making some amount of money every day. And on the other hand, you're also spending some amount of money every day. So when you calculate these two numbers and subtract the money you have made from the money you have spent, then if it is positive, it means that you have won the daily battle. Okay, it means you saved some amount of money. You made more money than you spent during that day. And this, in the long run, will lead to become financially more successful. So let's convert this concept into a JavaScript code and see if we are winning the everyday battle. So let's write it as a console. So console.log. And so the first thing is that today I made, for example, $30, okay? And the next one is that console.log. And also today I spent, let's say, $16. And let's calculate that. So the total money for today is how much? Is $14. So we made $30, we subtracted from 16, and what will end up is 14. Okay, so today we are positive $14. That means that console.log that I won today's battle. Okay, so this is the concept. Of course, we need to make some calculations, and as we go forward, we will do it. But I wanted you to see the steps for this process. Now, this was for today. What if I want to calculate the next day or the next day after that, or for every day? If I want to do that, I have to write all of these codes again. It would be better if we could put all of these code into a package, for example, and every day we just, for example, say calculate today's numbers, and then it will execute the codes itself. It would make our work much easier. And that is what function do. Functions group number of codes, and then instead of repeating all those codes, we only need to call that function. So here is how we can create a function. The first thing we need to write is the keyword to create a function, which is called function, okay? And then we need to call the name. And for this case, I'm going to call it daily battle, okay? And after that, we are going to have parentheses. And after the parentheses, we are going to have open and closing curly brackets. And we can simply put down all the codes that we had inside the function, okay? And every time that we call this function, all of these codes will be executed. So if I save it and if I come to the console here and I refresh it, nothing will happen because we didn't call the function. This exists, but we didn't call it yet. So how we can call it? We can come here and write down the name of the function, which is daily battle, and after it we need to add open and closing parentheses. So I created my function here, and now I'm calling it. So every time that I call it, the code will go back to the function and start executing all the codes inside it. So if I come here and refresh it, I get the same result here. And also I can call this function inside the console as well. So because we have the function ready in our codes, I can simply write down the name of the function, open and closing parentheses, and just press enter. And you see it is repeating the code itself again. So for every day, I can simply, by calling the function, make the calculation. But of course, right now we are using just some fixed numbers, and as we go forward on the next upcoming lessons, we try to use other given numbers. Okay, so that was all for this lesson, and on the next part we are going to practice this more. So see you on the next one. During the previous lesson, we learned how we can create a function and we place our code inside it and how we can call that function. Now this function was about our daily battle, how much money we made and how much money we spent, and then calculating the difference and then mention if we won the battle or not. Now I have a challenge for you. As I said in the previous lesson, these numbers are just for one day. What if we want to use this function to calculate our everyday battle with different numbers? So your challenge here is to replace all these numbers with variables and then check if our total money here is positive, then write down that we won the battle. If not, write down that we have failed that day's battle, okay? So pause the video and begin the challenge. All right, so let's begin the challenge. The first thing that we need is a variable for how much money we made that day. So I'm going to write down var made is equal to some number, which can be, for example, $40, right? And then how much money we spent, okay? And I'm going to write down, for example, $65 that day we spent, right? So here, the first thing that we want to do, we want to mention how much money we made. And instead of $30 here, we can add the value of our variable. So I'm going to write down made here. And then instead of this one, the spent, I'm going to add the value of spent variable. And then we need to make the calculation and see if it is how much we made that day, right? So I'm going to come here and write down var total money, and it is equal to made minus spent, okay? So how much money we made that day and how much money we spent, subtract them, and then we will have our total money. And I'm going to replace that with $, then total money plus total money, okay? And then we can use an if statement to say if, let's say, total money is greater or equal than 0, then we won the battle of that day, okay? But if it is less than that number, if it is less than 0, it means we failed, right? we failed today's battle. Okay, so save it, and based on the I'm gonna just take it, save it. Based on the numbers that we gave, of course we failed that day. So we made $40, we spent $65. So if we come here and call our function, so today I made $40, today I spent $65, and the total money for today is negative $25. And so I failed today's battle. Now let's try this with, for example, some other number. Let's say we made 40, but we spent $25. Let's call the function again. Today I made $40, I spent $25. The total money for today is $15, and I won today's battle. All right, so that was how we could complete this challenge. And there's one thing, when we spent more money, meaning it was negative, total money was negative, there's a problem here. The total money for today is minus 25. What we can do about this, if you want to use if statement to fix it, pause the video, think about it, and see if you can fix this issue. To fix this issue using if statement, it's easy. We can come here, and before we write this, we can calculate if it is positive or if it is negative. And we can write this line of code inside the if statement here. So I'm going to just cut this and come here and put it before the console.log that I won the battle or I failed. So here, if we win the battle, the way it is fine. But if the total money is negative, we need to show it that it is negative dollar than the amount. And if we, for example, add a negative sign here, it will be negative dollar negative than the amount. So we only need the amount here. We don't need the negative sign. There are different ways. One of the ways is that we can say total money is equal to total money multiply by -1. So with this minus, we don't change the number, only we make it negative. So if it is negative, it will be positive. We have our minus here, save it, and let's come here. We have our daily battle function here. Let's refresh the page and write it down, daily battle. And you see, now it's working fine. So total money for today is negative $25. Okay, so this was how you could fix this issue. And as I said, you have to just think about it, how you can come up with other solutions. And about this thing that I wrote here, I didn't talk about it, that you can, for example, write down a variable and then use the same variable inside the value as well. Again, we will talk more about this part later. I will make more examples as we have a complete lesson for it. But here I just wanted to point out how you can fix this issue, right? So that was all for this lesson. And if you're ready, let's go for the next part where I'm going to talk about the inline JavaScript that I mentioned in the first lesson of this section. So if you're ready, let's go for the next one. During the previous couple of lessons, we learned about how we can create a function, how we can call it. And in this lesson, I want to show you how you can use inline JavaScript. As I said, it is not for all type of codes. It's only for calling functions. And let's create a function and try to call that function from our HTML code. So I'm going to just remove everything here. And here I'm going to create a function called become member. Okay, open and closing parentheses, then open and closing curly brackets, and inside it I want to write down console.log, and inside it I'm going to write a string, welcome, you are a member now. Okay, so now I want to assign this function from my HTML code. Here in my HTML code, if we come to our page, here we have a button that is called become a member. Okay, let me just make this a little bit smaller and refresh the page, become a member. Okay, so let's find that button. Here it is, become a member. There is an attribute which gives us this ability to call functions, and that is called onType. click. Okay, here it is. And inside it, we need to call the function. And our function is become member opening and closing parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to just paste the name here and save it. Now, if I come here and refresh, there's nothing here in the console. But when I click on this button here, we get welcome, you are a member now. So every time that we click on this element, on this button here, it repeats the message, it executes our function. Okay, so this is one of the ways that you can call the JavaScript function from the element itself using an attribute. Okay, so this is called onClick, and later as we go forward, we are going to use it a lot. Okay, so that was all about this lesson, and if you're ready, let's go for the next part.